welcome to the Mouse Bytes podcast. Here we go. Hello and welcome to Mouse Bytes, the show about all Disney video games, past and present. I am your host, Jeff, and I'm joined today by Clay. Clay, welcome, buddy.
Hello, Jeff. How's it going, buddy?
Not too bad, not too bad. Been,
Good.
Yeah, been trying to juggle in all of life's little activities, including playing through this little gem of a game that we're covering this week.
Yeah, my life just got super busy all out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
I had a relatively relaxing weekend, and then now it's the start of the week, and things are about to get crazy. So figured we'd talk about some Disney video games while we can.
Yep, gotta work it in there. Mine was pretty much the opposite. My weekend was crazy, and then my week hopefully will start to slow down a little bit. But
Okay.
yeah, in the meantime, I think we found a good time to get on here and discuss this.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. It's probably one that we really needed to knock out in the front end of this show. So here we are.
I'm glad we got to it. So without further ado, we will just announce today's game as Castle of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse for the Sega Genesis and or Mega Drive. Alrighty, so as we always do, we'll start with what the heck is this game? Clay, you want to kind of start us off with that?
Yes, so this is a game for, as you mentioned, mainly for the Sega Genesis, as we call it here, in the States, and there's a couple different versions, but today we're talking about the Sega Genesis version, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. It is a Mickey platformer, probably one of the more well-known ones. Maybe not necessarily my favorite Mickey platformer, but it's definitely well received. It's kind of the first in this weird series that they kind of followed up after this one. And so this is kind of the grandfather of all these other pseudo sequel type games. And so it's a very Sega specific thing. So if you're thinking, oh, I played this one on, the Super Nintendo, like, no, you didn't. And you didn't play it on the NES. Like, this was, only pretty much a Sega, thing. And so, a pretty normal platformer for Mickey. He jumps on things. I know in some Mickey games there isn't a whole lot of jumping on enemies, but this is one where you do that. So maybe that will remind you of it as well. But that's it in a nutshell. It really is just kind of your own side-scrolling platformer. Mickey thing, very kind of straightforward, but kind of set the ground floor moving forward, I guess. I don't know. So does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of describing it and what it is. You want me to kind of delve into some of the technical things about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was developed by Sega, which, at the time you really think about it, like, this is before, so I guess we should say it was released November of 1990 on the Genesis.
Right.
And so this is before Sonic even, or very early in the Genesis life. The Genesis life. And so it kind of set the bar for what that system was capable of and what Sega was capable of as a developer. I don't really know the division that made it very well. It's called AM7 in the research we found. They are listed as creating like Streets of Rage and some other pretty well-known Sega properties, but can't really confirm. It's sort of like Nintendo's internal development studios where there's a lot of overlap in the facts, and it's hard to really isolate without digging into the credits and kind of putting the teams together manually. So didn't do that this time. Maybe in the future, but the key takeaway here is that this was developed internally at Sega. And I know we're part of Nintendo Village, so this is our first game I think that we're covering that's not available on a Nintendo platform, at least not this version. So bear with us. It's still a great game and still worth checking out, even if maybe you're more of a Nintendo kid like I was. So it is worth noting that there was, like Clay sort of mentioned, but just specifically there was a Master System version of it, which, again, if you're a Nintendo person and not super aware of Sega consoles, that was their 8-bit system, similar to the NES. And then it was also available on the Game Gear, also 8-bit system, like essentially a color Game Boy. I think more people know about the Game Gear than the Master System.
That's true. Yeah, they're basically, as far as I know, they're almost exactly the same game as each other. It's like a demake, basically. I guess they were at this point where they were still making for both consoles, and so those actually released afterwards, after the Genesis version came out. So they kind of demade it, or whatever you want to call it. I think I own it on Game Gear, maybe. And I remember playing a little bit of it, and it's okay. The physics handle pretty similarly. I can't remember if it's like level for level the same, because I didn't know the Genesis version very well when I played it. But I guess it's cool that they added it, still trying to kind of, cover all their bases. So
right. And it's also worth noting that it was remade in, what was that, like 2014-ish? Mid 2010s. It was re-released for modern systems. Don't have the list here, but the 360, the PS3, Windows, mobile phones in general, and it was a different game, but it was heavily based on the original. But we'll be covering that one separate, I'm sure. Not officially announced, but yes, I would really like to cover that one, and I still own it. So that one
definitely
strangely was taken off the marketplace about a year ago, and I don't know if it's returned, but there was some sort of licensing agreement with Sega and whoever developed it, which I want to say was Capcom Australia or somebody random like that. But
you're getting ahead in the show here, buddy.
Am I really?
Yeah. If you scroll down a little bit, there all this information's there.
Oh,
it's okay.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and take that away from you, since
go ahead.
You've lost your rights here. There was also this also came out on Sega Saturn, which I'll talk about a little bit more in detail here in a second. So following this game's release, like I mentioned earlier, there were sequels. Pretty much all of them have the word illusion in it, so it's kind of referred to as like the Illusion, saga, or whatever you want to call it. Amount of those games. And so following this one was Land of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, which was released for the Master System in 92 and for the Game Gear in 93. World of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck followed for the Genesis in 92. I own that game, and it's really fun. I love that game. 94, we got Legend of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, which was released on the Game Gear, and also a Master System port in 1998, exclusive to Brazil, who was still, as well as I remember it, still really into the Genesis in the late 90s. They were still big into that console. And so it's interesting. But yeah, there's just so many of these Legend and World and Land. I kind of get them. I started getting them confused.
Same.
And I'd buy one and be like, I can't remember if I have this one. And so I just kind of knew them based off their artwork and not so much. And then the fact that there's like Game Gear versions and Genesis versions, and it's just Master System or whatever. It's just like they get so confusing. But they're all really good, and they're all relatively similar. That one with Donald Duck is very interesting, and I look forward to eventually getting to it. But that was really the reason I wanted to get this game, is review this game and get it on our show. Is it opens the door for the remake that Jeff mentioned, as well as like all these sequels. Another one, in fact, was Epic Mickey Power of Illusion. Jeff, you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, Power Illusion came out around the same time as Epic Mickey 2, which was in November of 2012. For the 3DS, it was sort of like the counterpart, but it was special in that it was based in the Castle of Illusion series. It was sort of a spiritual successor, and so in it, the main villain is Mizrabel, which is the main villain in this one. But this time she's designed to look more like Maleficent, whereas in this one she looks a lot more like Snow White's evil queen. So an interesting choice and change in how she sort of looks like existing characters from Disney, but somehow is her own unique character. So
yeah,
and
we'll
I do
talk
have that
more
game.
about.
I've never beat it, so I'm looking forward to that one too.
Yeah, I own that one as well. I've yet to finish it, but I'm like more than halfway through, and I really like it. I just don't like playing things on my 3DS as much anymore, and so I kind of have to force myself. But it's a good game, and it was cool they did it. It was cool that it was, just on 3DS. That was really the only place you could play it. It has a really cool art style, and has like a Kingdom Hearts feel to it. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But technically, that would be the last version that we got as far as sequels or spiritual successors, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
As far as the Illusion series goes. Also, I mentioned earlier that this game, Castle of Illusion, also released on Sega Saturn. That was in 1998 in Japan only, as a part of the Sega Ages Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. It was I looked it up earlier. It's just literally two versions of this game, and I think it's Quackshot.
And Quackshot was technically the first sequel to this one, even though it's not part of the Illusion series. It was this team's like next game.
Okay, yeah.
Which
when you if I look up on like Wikipedia this series, they have like a subsection with like some other spin-off games that are kind of, and that one's on there. So they're probably worth noting. I'm not as well versed in my Donald Duck stuff, because even today I was looking at them, like there's Game Gear only Donald Duck games that I've literally never heard of. And I gotta buy all these now. So which I'm totally fine doing. There's so much, and it's just really expansive. Some of them are handheld only. Some of them are for older systems. They really we're just pumping these out. And so I imagine at some point we're just going to get fatigued and be like, well, this is another one of those, and it's got platforming in it. Like, I don't know how unique each one of these is.
Yeah, we may end up bundling. I'm not sure.
It might be worth doing some research, try to figure out. But anyway, the Sega Saturn is literally just direct. I don't know if you want to call them ports or whatever.
Right, I think it is.
No upgrades or high res. Yeah, just literally emulating the original game, which was the one thing I was looking at. I was like, ooh, did they make it better quality? No, as far as I can tell, it's literally the same thing. Maybe there's minor adjustments. I guess I didn't put.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it. Yeah. Interesting. Well, we'll have to at least report on that whenever we kind of get around to it. But so, I mean, with that, we can kind of jump into our history with the game. I know you've sort of touched on it, but what is your history with this game?
Yeah, actually not a whole lot. Unfortunately, this was a game that I never really had as a kid. Granted, I never owned my own Genesis. I only had one at my grandma's, and so I got to play stuff there on occasion. And I don't think she even had anything Disney. No, that's a lie. She had Aladdin and Lion King, but no Mickey. And so this was one that had always kind of eluded me. I may have played it on an emulator at some point, but really never had put much time into it. Yeah. But I knew the series that it kind of followed, and was eventually I needed to get my hands on it. For whatever reason, every time I came across it, it was just really expensive, and I didn't want to pay that much for it. And so eventually, I found a complete copy in box with the manual, cart, everything. And it was at a really good price. I don't remember how much it was, but snagged it up. I have it here sitting in front of me right now, and it's beautiful. And so this was really, just kind of in preparation for this episode, is really the first time that I've played more than the first level or two.
Okay.
I think I've played it maybe a couple times beforehand. So not a whole lot of history with it for me. I also played the remake that you were talking about earlier from 2013. Excuse me. And so I actually played more of that. I haven't beat it yet. I'd played more before I played this.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of interesting going backwards and being like, oh, this is that one level that they remade. I got the remake on Steam, I think, because it was I don't know if it was really cheap then, or if I it might have been like right before they pulled it, or
yeah, I think it was on sale for like $10 right before they pulled it.
Yeah, maybe that was it, because I wanted to get it on Xbox, but for some reason, stupid me didn't grab it then, and so anyway, I've been playing it on a keyboard and it sucks. So
yeah,
when I go back to it, I need to like map a controller to it because it was rough. So
yeah, I originally had that version on Windows Phone, and just playing it with the touch controls was awful, and so I got it on Windows 10, and I can play it with I can play it with a controller, but it won't go full screen. It plays like a third screen, so it's sucks. It really sucks. I have not figured out a solid full screen workaround yet. So as of now, I haven't continued playing it, but hopefully we'll figure something out. If not, like whatever, I'll play it in a smaller mode. Whenever we get around to it. But anyway, my history with this version is very similar to yours. I didn't have a Genesis or anything growing up. I didn't really have any access to the game at all with friends or anything. So there's a chance I played it on the Game Gear, maybe, but I don't know. I played a Mickey game on a Game Gear back in like 1990 or 92, or, whenever this one was out. I had played one, but I don't know if it was this one or not. So I'd played it on an emulator a couple times, maybe the first couple levels, but that was about it. So kind of went into it not knowing a whole lot, but being aware of its legacy and its importance kind of quality licensed Mickey games. Because, you really think about it, this was kind of the first one, and it set the bar really high. So, yeah. That's about where I was at with it. So I think with that, we'll jump on into our main gameplay discussion like we usually do. And within the gameplay discussion, as always, we'll discuss visuals, audio, gameplay, and difficulty, and anything else that we feel like kind of discussing, throwing in there. So we will start with the visuals. Kind of right off the bat, the character sprite for Mickey in these games is... it's well done, but it doesn't quite look on brand to me. I don't know. What is your thought on that? I've always thought that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think kind of off-brand sounds pretty accurate. His, I guess there's only a couple things, this is so weird. Like his butt area, in between his stomach and his feet. I don't know. It's more round. He kind of has more of a butt. I don't know. That part feels a little off. He's kind of chunky and.
Well, he's supposed to be a pear, and I think he's more of just an orb below the head.
Right.
I get what you mean. Totally.
He doesn't feel as slim. He's got more just mass to him. He's a bit bigger. I do appreciate that he's got the tan face, because I know we talked about in the past. I'm not a big fan of white face Mickey, and so
right.
Honestly, other than that, I think he looks fine. His feet look right. His hands look good. His ears look fine. His face, and maybe his face is a little large,
just slightly off, and I can't place. I don't know if it's the nose isn't right or the proportions aren't quite right, but yeah, the face is really what stands out to me. The other thing is the eyes are, it's literally it's a 2 pixel wide by 3 pixel high eye with one white dot, and then I don't know what that is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 black dots. And
right.
I think that looks kind of off to me, because it's not quite the pie eyes that are old school Disney, and it's not quite, the solid eyes of modern Disney or Mickey. And I it's funny because I think the 8-bit version actually looks better, the Master System version.
Oh, really?
Okay. It looks more like the Steamboat Willie era, or the band concert era with the solid black eyes, which is obviously a limitation of the system, but to me it just looked right. I think there's just something wrong with the eyes now that I'm looking at it more. It's nothing horrible. It doesn't look like a total rip-off. I know I kind of said it kind of looks like a knockoff or whatever, but anyway, it's a good-looking sprite, and it's animated very well, especially for the early 90s.
Yeah.
Obviously, later ones that were animated by Disney, like when we did. I'm drawing a blank on it, but the
first Mickey game that we did,
the Super Nintendo one by Traveler's Tales.
Yes, Mickey Mania?
Yes, thank you. Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
So the one in Mickey Mania obviously was animated by Disney, and that one is leaps and bounds ahead of this one, even though they're both for the Genesis and the Super Nintendo. Again, just smoother animation, more frames, but this one, for its time, if you really consider what was out, I mean, this is even technically a year before Super Mario World. The average character had, just like 3 frames of animation, and then, like faced left or faced right, and that was about it. Like this one's got all sorts of different animations. It has edge animations, like if you get close to the edge, which not a whole lot of games really have. Like Donkey Kong Country is honestly the only other game I really can think of off the top of my head from this era, from the the 16-bit days. I'm sure there's plenty, but like it wasn't a main thing. Like Mario never did that. Just lots of little nuances with the animations, and
his idle animation's really good.
Yeah, his little kind of. Yeah, go ahead.
He puts his hands behind his back, and then he kind of like bops back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I always appreciated that. I thought that was a nice little detail.
Yeah, I think that's very Mickey of him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to kind of go into any other either enemy sprites or backgrounds or anything like that?
Yeah, I got a couple things here to chit chat about. First off, starting out, the opening cutscene has a really cool effect in it where it kind of starts out and it's giving you some narration, and there's like a box with Mickey and Minnie and their whole thing, and so then, and we'll get into the story later, but basically as Mickey's chasing after it, it goes into like full screen widescreen mode where you see the castle in the distance and the logo pops up, and dude, like that whole part is, I mean, it's not as great nowadays, but yeah, it's just like really well done. They like clearly like intended, like they wanted to make this castle seem really epic and big, and obviously it's the center point of the game. In fact, on the end cinematic, you kind of get the same thing leaving, where you see this big wide shot, and so it just kind of makes the game feel big and epic. And because in some other games, like Pluto gets stolen, and then you just like move to the right of the screen and you start your game, and it's like, oh, okay, but this one just felt really epic and big. So I appreciated that. I liked the opening there. I thought that was pretty great. Enemy sprite wise, they took some interesting choices. That basically this castle is like magical, and so illusions and stuff. So really nothing was like off limits. They didn't really pull from a lot of source material, and so most of the stuff, as far as I can tell, is original. Maybe a couple things that are similar to other things, I don't know. But some of the bosses are kind of cool visually. Some maybe not so much. I'm trying to think of any enemies that really stood out where I was like, wow, that looks really cool. So maybe not the best visual enemies, but it's whatever. A couple notes I did make. Let's see, I got it right here. When you die and you just have to decide whether or not to continue or game over, there's like this really defeated Mickey sprite that they created only for the screen, and it's like terrifying, dude. Like he looks like deranged. It's really weird. I don't know if you ever game overed, but
no, I didn't, but I will have to go check that.
Yeah, I wish I should have like saved a picture of it so I could show it to you, because
that's okay.
It's kind of troubling. It's weird. So that always kind of threw me off visually, but it was interesting. They had it. Level 3 has these clouds. It's like a sunset mixed with clouds, and they're just really beautiful. It's like these mixtures of these different colors. I think there's like blue and orange and stuff. I guess it's supposed to be like right before maybe a storm. I don't know, because the level is called I think Storm, but it's really just at the top of the level, because then you kind of go back down in and you can't see it as much. But I don't know. So that really stood out to me, but I think the backgrounds and the middle grounds in general are pretty well recognized in this game, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think there's maybe one or two where they're a little bland and almost look 8-bit, like when you're underground in that level, but like the Candyland level is just super impressive with like bright colors and parallaxing in the background, which is, at that time really set the bar. I don't know that there was too much of that at this point. And it's like, we talked about Pinocchio a few episodes ago, and the Genesis version didn't have parallaxing, whereas the Super Nintendo version did. So it's like, it's interesting to see that Sega was able to pull it off and do it decently well. There's some weird oddities with the foreground scrolling at the same time, which I feel like shouldn't have been happening. But, I think they just didn't understand perspective at that time. I mean, this is one of the first games to do this.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of stuff like that. And
there was a couple times, like in the toy level, where I couldn't tell what I could jump on and what I couldn't.
That, I would agree, is a pretty big problem throughout, but especially on that level. Yeah, I was going to bring that up as well. So it is weird because some of the backgrounds, I don't want to say are so well done, but like there's parts that you pass through and there's parts that you land on, and it's hard to tell which is which. You're right.
Yeah, I thought of that one specifically more because everything's really blocky, and so it just looks like there's like all these different platforms. But really, I mean, the stuff in the front that you can step on is a little bit more, pronounced or whatever. But at least at the start, I was like, okay, guess can't jump on that. But after a while, I kind of got used to it and realized it was a little easier to identify what I could and couldn't jump on. But for a little bit there, I was like, oh, what?
No, it is interesting because it's like there's some that look like walls that you can't pass through, but you can just walk right in front of them. And there's some that look like stairs, but you can't climb them and stuff like that. So totally. Yeah.
So, I agree with you. For the time that this came out, I think it's a pretty darn good looking game. The art style it works well. So for the most part, I like everything about this. The cinematics look really good too, and so it was a very welcome addition. So
and just one thing to note visually, that it does have, I would almost call it the classic Mickey. I don't know what you'd call it. There's like a bar at the bottom that shows like power and your lives and items and all that, which sort of common in a lot of Mickey games at this time. And Super Mario Brothers 3 was guilty of it, but I think it's due to some of the parallaxing effects and large enemy sprites. To be able to pull off effects and have multiple things on screen, you've got to lower the resolution of the actual gameplay box. So it is worth noting that the bottom, it's like an eighth of the screen is cut off with that bar.
Luckily the game is pretty zoomed out, so it doesn't bother me as much.
Right,
I still see a lot, but not a bad looking little bottom bar. They put a nice little border.
Looks good. The font is good.
Yeah, and it's not like super bright and everything. It works well. They're still at the point here where they thought people appreciated scores for these kinds of things. We hadn't hit the point yet where like people don't care about scores really anymore.
No,
but
it was such a leftover. It was such a leftover thing from arcades, and Nintendo did it, so everybody else did it. So it's a funny relic, and it was sort of it was sort of the gamer score achievements type thing of the time. It's like, how do you prove to your friends or prove to the world that you're the best player at this? You get the high score, you take a picture of it and send it into Nintendo Power or whatever. Like, it's just before there was social media and internet, that was the only way you could prove it.
In fact, in the back of the instruction manual, they have a score book where you can leave a date, name, and score, and there's like quite a few little like blocks here where you can fill it in. So interesting. That's
so funny. There's a lot of relics of that time, like the notes page at the end of the instruction manual. Like, did anyone ever use that for anything? No.
Right? Nope.
So, that's funny. It's it's sort of like Lives. Lives was another thing that was a relic of the arcades, where it's like you don't really need lives at a home video game. The best example is like Banjo-Kazooie had lives and Banjo-Tooie did not, even though they're essentially the same game, for all intents and purposes. So it's funny. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's just little gamey things of the early 90s that are present in this game. So anything else visually that you wanted to discuss on here?
No, if I think of anything as we're going through the levels, maybe I'll mention it, but we hit on it pretty good.
Tie into gameplay a little bit, but I think same Okay, well, with that, we can kind of jump into the audio of the game, and as usual, we'll start with the music. What is your thoughts on this soundtrack?
Well, to start off, and this is kind of a dumb statement, but this soundtrack is very Genesis sounding. It was very noticeable. Like, I was playing it today, and my buddy was like, "Are you playing a Sega Genesis game?" I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "I could definitely tell." I was like, "Yeah." The MIDI or whatever the musical
sound library or whatever.
Yeah, it's just like one of the more infamous ones, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, I like how distinct it sounds most of the time.
Agreed.
As far as the music, I don't think it's the catchiest stuff, but none of it was really a turnoff to me. Like, I don't think I could really sing any of it for you, and I've been playing it all day.
But I know the level 1 theme pretty well, but that's about it.
Yeah, and that could I do too, but that's really, I think, just because that's the level I've probably played the most, obviously.
Yep, exactly.
But I'm sure if I had played these games as kids,
exactly.
or this game, I'd know more of it. But not bad, and I think it was real fitting. Each level, when the music for it fit fine. Yeah. Nothing felt overly out of place. Nothing was too short and repetitive or obnoxious or anything. So I didn't have any issues with it. I think that there's some better music later on in some of the later Mickey games for the Sega, but not bad.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and both it sounding very Genesis-y and also just being adequate without being overly intrusive or anything like that. Yeah, nothing that really stands out as like every reference I make is like rare, but like the the aquatic ambience or bramble scramble or whatever from sticker bush whatever symphony from Donkey Kong Country series. So like there's not like any one standout tune that I can think of, but like the World 1 music does stick in my head. The it's adequate. It's not bad.
And the boss music's pretty good. Most games around this time had like one boss music per game.
Right.
And so it's usually pretty upbeat and kind of Pokemon feeling or something where it's real intense and kind of repetitive. But and then it has like triumphant music when you beat a level and you get a gem. Every time it's kind of celebratory and all that. So, but for the most part, like when the levels are supposed to be kind of more dark and spooky, the music it has a darker tone to it. And then when you get to like the toy level, it's all like marching music because the bad guys are soldiers and things, and it's real upbeat and peppy and stuff. So I think they did a good job because if you look at the box art of this game, you think, whoa, this is going to be spooky. There's literally like a witch on a broom in front of a spooky castle. And and then you get in and you're like, oh, toy soldiers, pink toy blocks, like hoo-hoo. Yeah. So it's a little bit all over the place, and I think the music kind of helped convey like, oh, this is supposed to be spooky because the music is maybe a little more spooky than what it might look like visually. So I think it set a good tone for whatever it was that they were trying to convey in each level. So
yeah. Totally.
Other than that, sound effect wise, I love the sound effect when you jump and like kill a bad guy with your butt or whatever. It makes this like glass like ding, like that, and then the when you collect gems and stuff, like really, I don't know, just for whatever reason, never got annoying to me. It just was always like, ooh, that's satisfying. That and along with just how high you bounce off things, that whole experience, like I always wanted to jump on things because the mix of the sound effect and the physics of it and stuff. So I think they did a good job. They picked a good one, because sometimes you get things where every time you jump it makes a noise, or every time you jump on somebody and it gets annoying after a while. But
which
I really
I'm pretty
like
sure
those.
It does make a noise every time you jump. I think it's kind of like a bzz, but like it's done very well, and I would agree that it's like it doesn't really get obnoxious or on my nerves. I actually didn't even notice it until I kind of put on a long play of it when I wasn't playing, and realized it, because it seemed natural, it fit, and it wasn't obtrusive. So, I would pretty much agree with that in the sound design. Enemies in and of themselves, I don't think really make any specific like independent sounds, but just kind of like you said, the sound of defeating them and jumping on them is great. So
Yeah. Did you ever notice if you jump and hit your head on a ceiling, it makes a sound?
No, not specifically.
It's really weird. It's like the most realistic sound in the game. I don't know why, but it's like a clop sound, like a horse hoof. Yeah, and it just sounds really real for some reason. And so I was addicted to doing it because it's just clop clop, and I just was like, whoa, that's so. It just felt out of place, but it didn't bother me. I don't know. It was cool.
That's interesting. So. Yeah, I didn't notice that. So yeah, there's some nuance to the sound design here, obviously, and it's very well done.
Yeah.
Anything else audio wise?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay.
As far as I can think of.
Yeah, with that, we can kind of jump into the meat and potatoes that we usually do here, is the gameplay and the difficulty of it. Just to kind of set it up, this game does have technically 3 difficulties, and if you really break it down, 2. So practice is just literally for little kids to play around and not have too much consequence.
Yeah.
But then there's normal mode and then hard mode. So because the practice mode is so dumbed down, I think we both opted for normal this time, whereas I know we've talked about that we usually go to the lowest setting for these.
Well, I tried to look it up before I started one playthrough because I was like, oh, practice. Maybe that just means it's so easy. It's like practicing the game. Mm-hmm. And so I started playing it, and then I realized how quickly I was moving through it. Yeah. And within, I kid you not, with under 5 minutes, I beat the game. You don't even fight the final boss. It's just oh, you got to mini, you win. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I need to start over because.
Got it. So it's that super dumbed down.
Yeah, it really is.
To the point of removing part of the game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you go through, I think it's 3 or, well, it probably says it right here. You play through 3 levels and you find the 3 gems. And each level is just one section because pretty much every level has 3 sections. It each has 1 section.
Right.
And it's really quick. So, yeah, it's totally for kids and or somebody who's just getting familiar with the game. Normal is where it really picks up, or at least to a normal level, I guess. You play the full game. You start with 3 power spheres in your life meter. Each time you find 7 gems and you have 2 continues. Whereas in hard mode, you have to find the 7 gems again, but you start with only 2 spheres of life and you have 0 continues. So if you lose all your lives, you have a game over and you have to start at the very beginning. So pretty intense. I would probably never play that one unless I had played this game a lot. But this is definitely a game, in my opinion, that if you play it enough, I think you could get through it a lot easier. I don't know about hard, but normal without really, you could probably get 0, have to use 0 continues through this. But a lot of it is learning the game and kind of some of the, cycles and things.
The enemy patterns is the main thing, and the bats, right. And certain things that are just the clowns are hard to avoid. They're a little bit faster than you. Mickey does move a little bit slow. Is kind of maybe my only main observation on the
totally
gameplay.
Slow, dude.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the biggest hindrance of it. But the controls otherwise are good. He's nice and floaty, which I know you.
Yes,
I think you say you prefer.
Yeah,
which makes for easier platforming. Again, most Mickey games are primarily geared for children, although I'd say they're great for everybody. The floatiness and the ability to correct midair for jumps is good, and the momentum feels right, and all those little things for gameplay I'd say are well done. And I would imagine if you can play through normal and learn all the patterns and learn all this stuff, I would imagine you could then just play through hard and do just fine with it. But
yeah, even the bosses, once you learn their patterns, they're not terribly hard. It was the first time I would play them that I was like, ooh, right, I ended up dying multiple times. But so one of the big gameplay things of this game, mechanics, I guess you could call it, is you don't just jump on things. You have to, I guess, move your feet out of your way so that your butt can land on them.
To cannonball on them.
Yeah, this is literally not the first time I've used the word butt in this episode. But yeah, he literally like almost grabs his feet. And so you have to jump into the air and then press the jump button again to kind of put him into position to bounce off characters.
Yeah.
So the first time I played this, it took me a little bit to figure that out. Because I knew I like had done it before, and I was like, how did I do that? Because I was jumping on things and getting hurt. So I could see how maybe people would be confused by it at first. But once you get it figured out, like I said, you like fly up into the air, and it really makes it easy to get to harder to reach areas, or just like bounce from one enemy to the next and just kind of fly through the level. So
Yeah.
it's really fun. I like that mechanic. Did you enjoy the butt killing, cannonballing?
Yeah. It same for me. It was, kind of coming from a Mario background as my primary 2D platformers, or Donkey Kong. Like it's a little bit of a learning curve at first, but like, yeah, it takes a couple minutes and then you get used to it, and then it's great. And it's, I guess you could kind of say it's kind of like Scrooge McDuck's cane and DuckTales, right?
Yeah, as far as like the bounce you get from it.
Yeah. The momentum and all that. So it's kind of
Mhm.
cool to use it for platforming and to kind of reach higher up items, time it with where you land on your enemy, and then hold it down to get even higher jump. So all those traditional things are part of it. It's just learning to jump and then hit jump again.
Yeah.
It was really my biggest hurdle because I'm just not used to it. But yeah, it's good. The other way to attack enemies is projectiles,
Yes.
which, we talked about the marbles in Mickey Mania, now that we remember the name of it. It's similar to that, kind of, where I think in the first level you collect apples, and then subsequently there's other like blue
Yeah, and then they turn into
orbs.
marbles.
Yeah.
And then there's candles at the end.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different ones, which is really weird that they didn't just consistently stick with one throughout. But
it is interesting, yeah.
I mean, I'm not against it. I just
No.
like in Aladdin, you just throw apples the entire game, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting with the projectiles because certain levels they just give you a ton of them, and then in certain levels, because every time you go to a new level, you start out with none, so they don't like
Right.
carry over. And so I noticed like certain levels they don't want you to have them, and so you just can't find them. So I thought that was interesting that they like intentionally lay them out in certain levels.
Right. It's kind of more designer influence than player influence as far as how you're going to complete the level. So it is interesting. Hadn't really thought about that, but you're right.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there any other gameplay or difficulty elements?
Yeah. There is some other gameplay, more of it like level gimmicks, but I'm going to save those for when we get to them. And one thing I think is really strong about this game is they do some fun things throughout, and some of it maybe doesn't sound as impressive now, but back then it was pretty cool. But other than that, I just want to reiterate, I totally agree. It does feel really slow, and that was one of the biggest things was like, there's like it feels like there needs to be a run button.
Right, exactly.
I don't know how well they would have handled them, but whatever.
Yeah.
I noticed when I watched a speed run of this that the speedrunner was jumping constantly, which led me to believe that jumping is in fact faster than just walking normal. And so, in fact, in one of the later levels, there is a part where you really have to move fast, and it just was like, this feels like there should be a run here, and there really isn't. I guess there is kind of a run part in certain levels. You hit a downhill slope, and Mickey runs really fast. In fact, he has a different animation for that. His eyes get really big, and he's like freaking out, which is kind of funny. Other than that, though, I think that's pretty much everything as far as gameplay goes. You're moving left to right, get across the stage. Some levels maybe have some right to lefts and ups and downs, but for the most part, it's your typical get to the end of the level. Relatively linear stages, not a whole lot of alternate routes. Some levels you can take a high road or a low road. There are a couple hidden areas that I've come across or seen other people come across, but not a whole lot of different, like routes. a couple different things. I don't know
Yeah.
which one I want to say, Ruth's Routes, but
Yeah.
so yeah, that's all I gotta say about just the overall gameplay, I guess.
Yeah, and I pretty much just echo what you've said as far as all of those things and observations. So I think from there we can jump into the story of the game, which, as you alluded to earlier, is presented quite cinematically with these cutscenes at the beginning. Do you want to kind of go ahead and jump into that? Maybe pull from the manual.
Sure, I do have the manual here in front of me. They actually, yeah, right. They actually put a lot in here. Surprisingly, for the not really. Because really, the storyline is Minnie gets stolen, go find her, which is just really, a big step out for video game.
Go.
Yeah, just very cliche. But I'll read a little bit of this. I might skip if I start getting bored. So
okay.
I'll try to read quick just so we don't get too lost in this. Because they really have this kind of formatted like a little story because there's like dialogue and stuff. But basically, it's a lovely day in Vera City. I need to look up Vera City. I think I looked it up at one point, and I think it's just in the Illusion series, Vera City. Maybe while I'm reading this, Jeff, you could look it up and tell us more about Vera City. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and the sweet fragrance of flowers fills the air. Mickey and Minnie are happily dancing in the meadow, but then suddenly thick gray clouds cover the sun, and the birds fall silent. Don't worry, Minnie, I will clear it up. It will clear up soon, says Mickey. But before he can say another word, lightning flashes across the sky. Mickey quickly covers his ears and shuts his eyes. After a few seconds, he peeks to see if Minnie is all right. Oh no, she's gone. Way to go, Mickey. A musty odor overcomes the pleasant fragrance of flowers. Mickey glances up to see a witch on her broom hovering above him. It's Miserabelle, the evil witch who is jealous of Minnie's beauty. Her bony fingers clench Minnie's arm. She takes Minnie. Mickey chases her through the forest, past towering mountains. Finally, he reaches the Castle of Illusion, perched on a high, craggy cliff. At its gate, he meets an old man, bent over with age. And this part is shown in the opening cinematic. He talks to an old man. I don't think it tells you this, but the old man was once the king of the castle, he says. But Miserabelle took it from me. You must rescue Minnie before it's too late. Miserabelle is going to take Minnie's beauty for herself. She'll make Minnie look mean and evil just like her. You can defeat her only if you have the 7 gems of the rainbow. This is really kind of a Banjo-Kazooie thing here going on.
Yeah.
Rare totally jacked this whole witch stealing the little girl to get her beauty.
Well, that's Snow White. Well, I guess I guess she doesn't really jack it from the little girl. She just wants to be the most beautiful. Yeah, you're right. Okay, you're right.
And so basically they explain these gems that you have to collect. They're in the castle, the old man replies, but they're guarded by the masters of illusion. They have created strange worlds and bizarre creatures to keep you from reaching Minnie. You must be careful. Mickey thinks the old man and hurries through the gate in the castle. Mickey opens the door to every room. Each door leads to a different world of illusion. Can Mickey find the 7 gems of the rainbow in time to rescue Minnie? It's up to you. Wander through forests and ancient ruins. Splash into a cup of tea and leap across fluffy cupcakes. Knock down enchanted mushrooms, toy soldiers, and armored knights with Mickey's bounce attack. Minnie needs your help. Hurry! The end. So yeah, there's your story. I think it does a good job of kind of like explaining why there's different levels and why they decided to make these fantastic areas and stuff. Is you open a door and it takes you to a different area. It's not real, it's an illusion, but Mickey is under some kind of magical mushroom spell that causes him to see these things and interact with them and be hurt by them.
Oh dear.
Jeff, what do you think? Do you like the storyline of this game?
For what it is, it's great that it's there. You consider and compare it to, again, like what Nintendo was doing at the time, where it was basically the same thing but without any of the depth. The princess is stolen, taken to a castle, and you just need to go get her. And I guess they did throw in the dream sequence in Mario 2 and all that. But yeah, overall, it's cool that they put that in there and have that as the supplement material in the instruction booklet. I don't like like you said, I don't think as much of that is portrayed in game with the cinematics, although some of it is.
Yeah.
I did look up Veracity. There's nothing else I can see on it from any other Disney property, but my theory here is that it is a play on the word veracity, which is spelled the same way, just without the space, which is speaking of truth or being truthful, which if you consider there's a castle of illusion, then a city of fact or truth would make sense. So it's kind of like an opposite or a contrast in storytelling terms.
Okay.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So we'll kind of go with that unless someone knows otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's fine. It explains why you're doing what you're doing and where you're going and what the castle is and isn't and all that. So, yeah, it works.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. You don't expect a lot about platform games, especially from the early 90s. So,
right. No, I agree. And yeah, like you said, they do mention some of it. Like I think the old man says, like, be careful. If you hurry or Minnie will turn old, like, what's her name? Ms. Rebel. But they don't really explain that she's stealing her beauty. That's like something you have to read. And the fact that he's the king is not ever mentioned as far as I can remember. In fact, at the end of the game, I don't even think it shows him like reclaiming his throne. I assume he does. But then again, I think the castle blows up at the end. So Mickey goes in there and blows the place up. I don't know. Maybe I need to learn more, but I thought that was interesting. Last thing I want to talk about with the story is Ms. Rebel herself.
Yeah.
Which I found her a little interesting because I was like, who is this lady? Like,
right.
Because she looks like the old witch from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so I was like, oh, well, maybe they just used her because, like, oh, she's, why not? She could be in other things. So I looked her up and I realized, oh, no, that's not her at all. In fact, I think the lady and the old woman in Snow White is just like Evil Queen or something. Does that sound right?
Yep.
I don't even think she has a name.
It's her technical name, yeah.
So Ms. Rebel obviously is a pun on the word miserable. And so they use that. Basically, this is her only thing other than she's in a couple illusion games. Like Jeff mentioned, she's also in the spiritual successor, was it Power of Illusion? The 3DS one. And so, but in that one, like Jeff also mentioned, they kind of like changed her appearance a little bit. She still kind of looks like Maleficent in this game, but also,
she looks more like the Evil Queen more than anything to me, because I'm looking at a character art from that. I'm not really sure where the Maleficent.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is.
Yeah,
it
you're
say
probably
that
right
in the description, but I don't know.
And then and so when they did the Power of Illusion, they completely switched it over to look like her, and which just makes it that much more confusing, if you ask me. So I don't know. It's just kind of like a weird hybrid of some different characters, evil, and then eventually like, oh, let's just kind of transfer her over. But
right.
Anyway,
and she does change form in this version, so she does look at the old hag at one point, and then does look like the pretty queen at other points. So it's not to say that she can't shapeshift and just look like the one villain she wants to. We don't really know enough about her, I guess.
That's true.
To say she's not a shapeshifter.
Yeah. I like that they created a character just for these games. I wish she was in more stuff and maybe had a little more of a backstory.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see that.
I realized for this time period, maybe it wasn't so great. I feel like it was a missed opportunity with Power of Illusion for the 3DS that they didn't do more with it, and they did change her. I feel like they could have used that game to really give her a backstory, even though she's like working with other villains and stuff. I don't know. But I like that this game kind of has its own villain, even if it is just kind of a lot of the evil villain lady tropes thrown in. So, but yeah. So I just want to mention that real quick.
Totally. No, she's definitely an interesting antagonist versus just being there, that she does have those different shape-shifting abilities and kind of that implied history, but without really knowing. So there's a sense of mystery around her. I would love to see her fleshed out as well.
Yeah.
So
okay.
With that, I think we can move on into the levels of the game. If you want to kind of talk us through them, lead us through, and then I will kind of just jump in and comment on those.
Yeah, feel free to stop me if I get moving too quick. Or maybe I'll try to stop after each level and look for your input if you haven't interjected at that point. So total, there are 5 quote-unquote levels in this game. Each level, like I mentioned earlier, has about 3, maybe 4. Some of the later levels are kind of different in the way they're set up. Different areas, I think is what they're called. So you get to an exit, and then it takes you to the next area. Each level ends with a boss, which is technically like the 4th area. So starting off, we have the Enchanted Forest, which is where you start out, chasing, out to, I guess is it technically no, it's the first level. So after you get into the castle, it kicks you. It's confusing because you kind of start out in a forest and then you go
right, like
back to a
castle.
forest.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the first area is just a very introductory level. You're in the forest. It introduces you to a couple different things. Rope is the first one, so you can swing from rope. I don't think it was very well done in this game. Most Mickey games, the swinging mechanic kind of sucks, and I always want it to be like Donkey Kong Country good, and it never is.
Right.
I never know if I need to hold up or anything or how to let go. I don't know. I didn't like it, the Mickey Mania swinging, and I don't really like this one either. I didn't die too much from it, but in some of the later levels, you need to be decent at it, and sometimes I wasn't. So, so you have that, and then you also at one point get chased down a very downward angle hill by a giant apple for some reason, and so that's one of the mechanics that kind of comes back later. And so there's a couple things here in the first level where they're trying to introduce you to different things that are going to be happening. So that one's really pretty straightforward. You're in the woods, bunch of trees in the background, that whole thing. Then you get to the second area, which is one of the more visually cool areas, and a good one to have up front. You're up in the trees with all these spider webs, and so there's these spider enemies that are dropping down on you, and you are jumping from giant leaf to giant leaf, trying to get across, and there's like water or dew on the spider webs. Just really cool details on those. This part is a little frustrating, at least for me, because some of the leaves automatically move once you land on them, and then they just carry you across and run into a spider. Or the spiders like go up and down at different times, and my timing was always really off on these, and I kept getting hurt. There's also an enemy that's like a little leaf bug that really kind of is green and just blends in. It's kind of hard to see. They killed me a lot at first, and then I kind of started realizing that. So other than that, that's that area. The next one is a tree platforming section. It's where things get a little spooky. Excuse me. Starts off actually daytime, and then as you walk up the first tree, it all of a sudden turns to night, which is nice. Pretty cool. Me and Jeff always appreciate those effects. Yeah. Yep. And then you're at these like broken old trees, and you jump from tree to tree, and there are these ghosts that you can bounce on. They kind of look like the ghosts from Mickey Mania. Yes. Yeah. Kind of has that vibe. Not exactly, but probably the closest thing we have to a reference to another Mickey, if you ask me.
Yeah, definitely influenced by it.
Yeah, and so you bounce on them, get across, relatively easy. Then finally you get to the boss for the first area, which is a tree. Kind of has like a Kirby kind of feel going on, fighting a boss tree. He's relatively easy. You just jump on him, over him, and then he drops acorns from above. Dodge those, jump on him, rinse and repeat. And you can either throw projectiles at him or you can jump on him, whichever you prefer. And he explodes. He literally makes explosion sounds and visuals, and then he dies, and you move on to the next level. Jeff, any thoughts on level 1 here?
No, nothing major. I was going to call out that transition to nighttime, or whatever, to dark, stormy. It looks really cool. It's a good use of the Genesis's palette swapping abilities, which I don't know if that's specific to the Genesis, but like we've seen it in other games, so it's a nice effect, like you said. Nothing else beyond that. I think you covered it pretty darn well.
Cool. Thanks, man. Also, in between levels, it gives you your points. And I found out online, if you just mash the start button, eventually you'll get an extra life. It'll make a little sound and everything. So I was doing that a lot. So if you're listening and you're going to go play this, make sure you do that. Yep. Next level is Toyland, which is pretty generic and what you would expect. Very bright colors, blocks, like pink and yellow blocks. Mm-hmm. The first level is interesting because it literally starts you off almost... You can see the exit, but you can't go through it. And so in this level, you have to find a key at the very tip top to unlock said exit. And so it's an interesting style of level. It's a little different, not just your left or right, but it's pretty much all linear or upward, I guess, vertical.
Yeah.
And so as you're moving up these blocks, there are toy soldiers coming down. And so... platforming and like side-scrolling games suck when bad guys have the high ground. And so this one, you definitely have to plan it out and make sure that you jump at the right time. And it's not terrible. Luckily, he has a tall jump, so you can get away with it pretty easily. But it's a little bit of a challenge. You can't just fly through this level. It takes some time.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. I liked that. Once you get to the top, you get the key, and then all of the stairs, quote unquote, go flat, and you just run back down the level and collect all these little diamonds for extra points on your way down. It's pretty fun. It's a cool little section. Next level is a little more generic. They introduce some springs that you bounce off. There's these like jello things that you have to jump across, and if you don't jump enough, you'll sink down into them, which was unique. This level also has a lot of blocks that you have to clear the way by throwing marbles. So a little different. Not too much going on there. And then the third level in this is...
Real quick with the second, unless I'm looking at the wrong one, the inverted mode, is that in the second one where you flip the level upside down?
That's level 3.
Dang it. Okay, never mind.
Why don't you go ahead and talk about that, Jeff? Since
sure,
we're literally on that point right now, so you're fine.
Yeah. Cool. So basically, the gimmick in this part is, as you're going through the level, there's little up-down arrow icon blocks that you can grab, and when you touch them, it flips the level upside down, and then any enemies that are on screen will fall and break, or be destroyed. Whereas you'll just be stuck to the same plane. So like if you're on the bottom, you'll be stuck to the top or vice versa. Whereas the enemies, if they're stuck to the top, like when you flip it, they'll all fall because of the gravity. It's kind of weird because the physics are applying to the enemies, but not Mickey. So, but it's an interesting gimmick. It's one that I've never really been a huge fan of. We've seen it. I don't know if we've seen it in any of the games we've covered, but I've seen it in other games I've played, and it's just never my favorite. The one that comes to mind is that Runbow, that game that we played?
Yes.
I don't know if anybody's played that. It's a competitive online race to the finish game, and there's a thing you can get where you do that to your...
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting mechanic. It's not the best. It's not the worst. It's just something to spice up the gameplay, and it's cool to use it if you are good or bad and you are overwhelmed by enemies. If you can save that little flip until you're about to die and then hit it, you'll just kind of clear the screen, which is convenient.
Yeah, that's why I like it, because the clown enemies are really difficult in this game, in my opinion.
They are, yeah.
And for whatever reason, they set it up to where every time a clown shows up, there's also a flip the screen button. And so I just hit it every time just because it kills them instantly and I don't have to worry about it. I noticed speedrunners completely avoid them and just stay on the normal access or whatever the whole time. And so they don't flip it. I think it's a waste of time probably for them. But
probably.
So you can just avoid it if you would like. It's not, required. So, but yeah, it's a different mechanic. It's good. That's what I like about this game is they tried some different things. It never felt overly gimmicky. It was like, oh, cool, something new. It slows down a little bit toward the end, in my opinion. But in the earlier levels, it's pretty apparent and fun. So. Yeah. Then at the end of that level, you get to your boss for this stage, which is a spring-loaded clown with boxing gloves and expanding arms. It's basically Arms for the Switch,
Right.
but in a creepy clown. He's not terribly hard. I think he killed me the first time I played. I just wasn't ducking, and so this is definitely one of the enemies where you really gotta duck to get under his punch. Jumping over it isn't really an option because his arm's so long. So you gotta duck. So. Moving along, level 3 is the Storm, which I mentioned earlier. It has the really cool clouds. This first level, you have to pick the correct path swimming through the water. And so this is kind of where I hit my first snag. I wasn't sure where to go. There is a right and wrong way to go. And then if you go the wrong way, it kind of spits you back out and you have to do it again.
Yeah.
And once you figure it out, it's actually a really short level. So once you have it memorized, you can kind of fly through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the swimming in this isn't bad. The swim mechanic is fine. It's got a Donkey Kong Country thing where if you hit the button, you kind of rise quicker than if you're moving around. Some of the enemies in the water seek you out and are a little more difficult, but you don't spend a lot of time in the water in this level or in this game in general. So it's an okay first level. After that, you go inside to this cave
Ruins,
temple.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know exactly what it's supposed to be, but maybe down below the castle or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
but
all
they
these
have
are portals through doors, so I guess they kind of have a creative license. Yeah.
They could literally send you anywhere. It doesn't really have anything to do with the Storm, which is what the level's called, but whatever. This level has a really good background effect on it where there's multiple planes of visuals moving at different angles, and then you have a waterfall in the front.
Yeah.
Which looks really good, and then there's these other waterfalls that are way stronger current, and without even having to jump into it, I could tell I better not jump through that when it's going because it will start and stop, and so I assume it pushes you down really quickly. This part of the game is really difficult. Probably the most difficult platforming section. There's all these itty bitty
open air narrow platforming.
Yeah, and it's a little slippery. So I died a couple times. It's tough, and then eventually you get to the end and you're like, okay, good, this is over. But basically there's all these little platforms. If you fall, it's just bottomless pit below you, and it's pretty tough. So in the time I played, by far the hardest part of the game for me. Following level is a level, you're kind of in the same area, but there's this mechanic where below water rises and lowers really quickly. And so if you're standing down there when the water gets to its highest, it hurts you and pushes you backwards. And so if you get far in the level, it'll take you backwards if you don't get to higher ground, like a platform above you. And Mickey has this really funny animation where he throws his hands up in the air and his head's up and he's like, I'm drowning. And it's really the only time you see that. But this is the level I was telling you about where you really got to run, and it really isn't a way to run.
Right. Yep.
And so you kind of have to start, because you can walk in a little bit of water, but when it gets to its highest point, it'll take you away. Yep. And so you kind of have to drop down while the water is still lowering, and you might jump out of the water while it's filling up. So it really kind of gets your blood, your heart pounding, your blood going, because you're like, oh man, I'm running out of, time. And so this is a fun little mechanic, completely unique, and no other level like it.
Yeah.
So
it is interesting to note, and nothing against the game, is just interesting to note the art style for each type of water between this level and the previous version, or level 2. There's just slight variations, and I think it's to denote what you can touch, what you can't touch, and what is hazardous. So the waterfalls you can walk behind have this really cool transparency effect, look very similar to the ones in Sonic the Hedgehog waterfalls that you can walk behind. But then the one that you can't go through that falls down has a much thicker look to it. It's not transparent, so obviously not to go through it. Then the water that kind of comes up from the floor is a deeper blue, which I think is to make it look more dangerous. And then in the previous level, the water you could swim in was much more of an aquamarine kind of, you can swim through it, and a cool transparency effect while Mickey's underwater. So I always call out the water in all these, so I figured I'd just jump in real quick. My observation on that. It's
No,
pretty cool.
I appreciate it because I could care less about that kind of stuff. So it's good to have somebody here keeping these developers in line and accountable for
call them out
for how they do their waters. Yeah, so that is. Then we finally get to the boss for it, which is literally like a creature of the Black Lagoon looking dude.
Doesn't he look like a Zora from A Link to the Past?
Yeah, I can see that too. Yeah,
or like a gremlin. I don't know. He's kind of
green and amphibious
swamp
to a
monster
degree
from Scooby-Doo.
He has like cute eyes though. It's really weird. But he's moving around so fast it's hard to kind of get a good look at him.
I didn't really notice the eyes, but yeah.
And so he killed me quite a few times, and I could not figure out.
Sporadic and jumping.
His ground attack is really fast, and he just jumps all over. But eventually, I realized every time he kind of jumps down at the same spot, and so if I anticipated it, I could literally hit him every time he'd come out.
Yeah,
and then he'd go hide, and then come back, and so then at that point, it wasn't really a big difficulty. I completely forgot that I had projectiles. I'm watching a guy play it right now, and he's just like throwing things at it.
Same.
I completely forgot I could do that
midair before he even lands.
Yeah. So
next time.
I should have.
When you play through it on hard mode, that's what you'll do.
Exactly. And when I do my hard speed run, I'll do that. No, just kidding. So then the next level, this is where things get a little bit different. You hit the library level, which is the next level, obviously. And then, so when you start off, you are faced with some new enemies. Some of them are the letter A.
Yep.
For some reason, starts attacking you, as well as these. What?
No, I was gonna you are walking through.
You're in a
books,
library,
so why wouldn't they be?
Just the letter A's came out to fight, and alongside the A's are these white, like maggot caterpillar looking things.
Maybe they're bookworms.
That would make sense.
I don't know, but that would be my guess.
So, but very quickly you leave the library.
Right.
For a level called the library, and you find a open bottle of milk that you go inside of.
Yeah.
And it transforms you into a magical world full of candy canes and other sweets and candies and like Swedish fish enemies.
Right. I had that same thought.
Swedish fish.
Yep.
And so you do some platforming. There's like watery milk below that you don't want to fall into. Eventually you get to the other side and you find a jewel gem thing, which and it's weird. This is like a level inside of a level, and you find the gem at the end of the level, which normally you don't find it. So it's like kind of midway through this level, the library level. So it's kind of weird. So you finish that part, and then it kicks you back out of the milk, and it's closed off. And so then you have to go up and around to find another milk, basically. At this point, you go above, because right now you're like a little Mickey, and there's like giant books and things. So
they did like the scale of him being a mouse,
right? Which
like Chip and Dale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it totally has a Chip and Dale feel. And the cool thing, when you go across the ceiling, you go rope to rope, but it's actually I don't know what you call it, like
the light strings, like on a single bulb light.
And so every time you grab hold of one, it like turns the light off, so you go in the dark, which is cool. I thought that was a fun little thing. They didn't have to do that; they could have just been ropes, but they went a little above and beyond there. And so you make your way through. You find another milk bottle, and then you kind of repeat the process.
Actually,
you don't.
There's a cup of tea, isn't there? Or is that just a bonus level?
Oh, I didn't even know you could go in the tea.
Yeah, that's just from seeing a long play. I didn't find it myself, but I saw the one that I have on right now. There's a guy that goes into this cup of tea, and I guess it's just a mini game or a bonus level.
Maybe, or I don't know. I don't remember that.
Okay, so you are still looking for more milk. Sorry.
Yes, and then eventually you get to the milk, which takes you to the boss for this level. Excuse me for my sniffles. And so you fight this dragon in back in that like milky fantasy land, and he just kind of pops his head out, and if you're kind of on your toes, you can be there when he pops out, and you jump on him and you just keep repeating. He kind of looks like Pete's Dragon to me.
I was about to say that.
Red.
Yeah, he kind of looks like Elliot.
Yeah, Elliot. That's his name.
Yeah.
He's got like the same kind of face as Elliot, but
Yep.
not a terribly difficult one. You can still throw projectiles at him, and not too difficult to take down. So at that point, you have defeated the last boss or the only boss of level 4, and then finally you hit the last level, which is level 5, the castle. You finally make your way up top to the top of the castle. This level's aesthetic is literally you're just walking through the castle. You have different enemies. There's like these knights in armor that attack you. Some of them are in the background, and some of them are actual like moving, bad guys. Mm-hmm. There's these falling objects. It's basically like thwomps from Mario. So it kind of took one page out of their book. I thought this level was the most boring. There's not a whole lot to make it very unique. You platform across some purple goo. There's a skull bridge, which is kind of cool at the end. Just kind of a boring level. I don't know. It's not easy, so I guess there's challenge to it, which is fine. But I don't know. I just didn't think they did a whole lot to make it stand out or unique. Right. Other than the fact that you're going through the castle. So.
Pretty visually plain as well, just kind of bricks. Not a whole lot of interesting things. There's a little bit of background parallaxing, but gets a little better after that initial part, I think, as you get to the next part.
And the next part is a swimming portion level, and literally the only thing it basically encourages you to swim really fast because you're like getting chased. It basically reminds me of Donkey Kong Country's Croctopus chase level, if you're familiar. It's basically that, where you're moving quick and you're trying to get through as fast as possible without getting hit. So this is the most time you spend in any kind of water in this game, and so I guess it's unique for that reason. Following that is the clock tower level, which is like most clock tower levels in games or in movies, where there's all these convenient flat or round cogs that you must jump across to get to the top. And so this is a very vertical level. Mm-hmm. You have these beam pressure things that are stomping down that can smash you and all that. And so you got to make your way around, jump from cog to cog, and make your way up to the top. Yeah. This level has these bats in it that are in a bunch of other levels too, but man, those bats are obnoxious. Sometimes you can't see them coming, and they just come at you right at a level where it's like hard to block them
for you.
Yeah. And so they're frustrating. But if you bounce off them, you get a lot of height, which helps you get through the level, which is nice.
It's true.
So, not a very easy level. It's actually pretty difficult. After you beat that, you get to the last boss before the actual final boss, which is this really random character. It's like this big, giant ogre-looking dude.
Yeah.
Who kind of reminds
like Willy
me...
the Giant from... Mickey and the Beanstalk, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Not a terribly difficult boss. He gets more mad as you hit him, and he kind of inches along, and his jumps aren't very big, and he just swings at you, and so you just jump over his swings and land on his head a bunch of times, and he dies. Kind of anticlimactic, but we still have a final boss left, so whatever. Anything else, Jeff, before we hit the final boss here?
No. I think we've done an admirable job of going through those.
Cool. So Mickey finally makes his way to the top of the castle, revealing all of his gems that he's collected from each level, which are the colors of the rainbow, which makes a rainbow bridge, a la Ocarina of Time.
I was thinking Ocarina of Time, yeah.
Which allows him to bridge across to a tower where... Minnie is being held. The old witch transforms into a more, I guess, beautiful looking, final boss form. There's a couple platforms, and she kind of moves around the level and kind of summons these ghost skull looking things, and she like spins them around, and then they all just go out in different directions. And so you just have to kind of dodge them. And if you know the right places to stand, you're gonna more than likely miss them. As she gets more hits on her, they become faster, so a little more difficult to dodge. The whole time Minnie is looking on from a bubble, and you are just trying to save her, I guess. And she doesn't really have a whole lot of other forms. It's really the same.
No, it's just kind of this
attack cycle over and over, and you just keep bopping her on the head with your butt, and eventually she dies. Not overly difficult. It's a kind of a longer boss fight, I guess, but like I said, doesn't really change a whole lot. Eventually you bop her on the head for the last time, and you pull this, I don't even know where he gets this. It's a sphere, and it like attacks her and makes her turn back to the old lady. And Minnie drops down, and yay, you saved her.
And
hugs and like a weird dance that they're doing.
Little dance, yep.
And then all of a sudden, the castle starts to shake because apparently it's about to explode because Mickey is going to blow it up. And so the old witch is like, "Hey, follow me," which is weird. And she flies away with them and rescues them.
They're on like a little swing.
The same, and then they're like watching apparently fireworks come over the castle, and they fly away. They don't really show the castle exploding, so they like kind of insinuated that it was going to, and they had to get out of there, but then they don't show that happening. I don't know. And now Mizrabel is nice because she's old again.
That orb like pulled the evil out of her or something. Like I don't know.
That could be.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Maybe it explained it, and I just like zoomed over it in the story mode.
I don't think it's explained.
So Minnie gives Mickey a kiss or a hug or something, and he just like passes out in the grass. I think partially because he was like in love, and partially because he's completely exhausted after going on this illusion adventure. Oh, she kisses him. Yeah, he just passes out from pure exhaustion. You hit your credits, and they're dancing through the woods, and the game is over.
And that's it.
And that is it. So a little confusing. You can maybe kind of put some things together. I like to think the castle is still intact because I'm pretty sure it comes back in some sequels maybe. So that's the game in a nutshell. We knocked that out in about 15-20 minutes. Not terrible. So I thought it was worth actually going through the levels in this one because I felt like there's some cool, unique things that really make the levels
totally
unique and make you remember them. It's not all just the same jump from platform, and it's this style. So I really appreciated that. I thought it was worth mentioning, definitely. So.
Absolutely. With that, I think we're starting to run a little long, so we can wrap it up with our final thoughts. Since I think you did most of the summarizing there, I'll kind of start with mine, and then we'll go to yours. So, final thoughts. This game is a true classic of the 16-bit era. It is a good platformer. It's got, the story is whatever, but it's got good gameplay and very high production values. I think it set a really good bar for licensed Mickey games going forward from it. Obviously, it went on to inspire quite the series of Illusion games and spin-offs, so I think its legacy kind of speaks for itself on how well it was done and all of that. So I would recommend it to anybody, and I know, again, the focus here is the Nintendo aspect, but if you ever do branch out, definitely this is one to branch out with onto the Genesis. So what are your final thoughts on it?
Yeah, I like this game. I think it's good. It's not visually my favorite looking Mickey game. The mechanics, though, I'm totally fine with. I think jumping on enemies, I have no issues with that. And the physics and everything, I have no issues with. So that being said, I get why it's beloved by a lot of people, and I think that is completely valid. And I get that, and I love that this, us reviewing this allows us to check out some other games and kind of go down that rabbit hole. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of what they may or may not have for the series. Maybe this was as good as it got, and it just got worse from there. maybe it gets better. I'm not sure. So that being said, I like the atmosphere of it. I like the idea of it. So yeah, overall, I think it's good. I'm glad I finally got to play it. I'm glad I own a copy of it. Man, there was something else I was going to say about it, but I can't remember. Yeah, so overall, I enjoyed my time with it. I love all Mickey platformers, to be honest, so it would have to be really bad for me to not enjoy it. I think it has some unique qualities and gimmicks that really make it an enjoyable time. And yeah, I think you should definitely check it out. I'm surprised, outside of the remake, that this hasn't really got re-released in collections or anything. I know Disney is kind of weird with licensing stuff, but
it also doesn't help that it was made by Sega, not like Capcom or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
But I would love to see Sega release like a collection of all of these.
Oh, dude, that'd be so cool.
Yeah,
all the weird like portable ones that are on Game Gear that most people. Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. So cool. Yeah, maybe someday. Fingers crossed. Those are my final thoughts.
Alrighty, well, with that, we will go ahead and wrap up. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you aren't already, give us a follow on Twitter at Mouse_Bytes. That's Mouse and then _BYTEES, as in the digital measurement. You can also find us on thenintendovillage.com, where you can find links to all of our episodes, as well as other shows, reviews, and content. So our episodes are also found on the Nintendo Village YouTube, so if you'd like to see gameplay for each episode, you can find us there as well. So thank you all, and tune in next time as we cover Hercules for the PlayStation 1, continuing our trend of not focusing on Nintendo released games, apparently.
Oops.
And with that, have a great day, everybody. And you must be careful.
See ya.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and visit thenintendovillage.com, your home for everything Nintendo.